Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne, and I'm the author of women's suspense novels, Getting It Right, Tangled Lies, Reckonings, and then this year in September, but we're messing with the title, but I think it's going to be True Grace. But my publisher, we'll see. Stay tuned. We'll see if the title changes. And I'm delighted to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Marlis Manley Broadhead, and she'll explain which name she publishes under and where you can find her and all of that. Welcome, Marlis.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Oh, I'm just delighted to meet you and delighted to be able to talk with you about your book, Trophy Girl, and about your writing journey, and we'll have a great conversation. So let's start with telling everybody a little bit more about you, about who you are, and how you came to be a debut novelist.
Well, my background is much like yours. In fact, I beat you by 2 years. I wrote my first book at 10. I think you wrote yours at 12, right? Mine was called The World and I never stopped writing after that. I just kept at it. Even as a young mother with 3 kids, I was writing poetry and short stories, and I cranked out a novella. So I was an avid reader. I'm sure you were too. But I wasn't doing anything with it really until I got to university. And I was teaching as a graduate student. Well, actually, I studied creative writing as an undergraduate. And then they got the MFA program in my alma mater, Wichita State, which opened all the doors for me. And that's when I got my mentor and fabulous faculty help and started publishing poetry and short stories in literary magazines at that time. But the novel I started thinking about in graduate school, and I had 3 kids then. I was a single mom with 3 kids, and I was dating one of my professors who went to a race with me to watch my stepfather race, because this is a racing novel, right? And he looked at me halfway through the evening and he said, "You've got to write about this." And so I wrote a short story and started thinking about what would a novel from a teenage girl's point of view look like, because that was my background. Every weekend going to the races with either my stepfather, dirt track racing, which is what this book is about, or my first father, also named Frank, who was doing Sports Car Club of America. And so I had all this background, and I started thinking about it. But life was going on as well. I had 4 kids finally, and different jobs, and we moved around. And so it took me 32 years before I actually got the book finished and published.
Wow, 32
yes, 32 years. Is that right?
Yes, that is. I've heard many people talk about how long it's taken, but I think you're my first 32 years. The first one I heard about 32 years.
During that time, I wrote another novel, put it in a drawer. It's with an agent in New York now, and for 4 months I'm waiting. It's probably on the floor gathering dust somewhere. I haven't heard. And then I've started 2 others. So
you're catching up. You're making up for lost time. That is wonderful. So tell us a little bit about Trophy Girl. We know now that it's set in a racing kind of a setting. Oh, yeah.
It's historical fiction. And this isn't exactly the car, but that's the color and the number of the car that my stepfather drove to win the very first Grand National. And that was in 57. And that's the year that the novel is set in. And I had my experiences were as a young girl and as an observer, but I had all of Dad's scrapbooks. So I had tons of information about the racing and so forth. And then I had some really good subject matter experts. And in the book, and the main character is not like my stepfather at all, other than he's a champion race car driver. But he's at odds with life. He hasn't married. Well, he has, but it was annulled. And winning this grand championship, the very first one, is everything to him. And there's a 14-and-a-half-year-old girl who's lost her parents and finds an old scrapbook and decides that the man in the scrapbook is her real father and runs away to find him. And that's her need in her life. And her aunt, who has been taking care of her, who thinks she's going to be an English teacher forever and never go anywhere or do anything, but she wants to. That's what her goal is, to live and do something. She has to follow the girl and find her. And then the three of them sort of coalesce. There's a court battle and so forth, as they try to figure out who they are, what they really want, and what a family really consists of.
Wow, that is fascinating. That sounds like a really good storyline. And I love the cover. Show us the cover again.
Yeah.
Look at that. Trophy girl.
Yeah.
And
that's under Marlis Manley, which was my husband's suggestion, the professor who told me to write it, that I married later. And then I took his name Broadhead. So now I've got these two different names running. I apologize for the confusion.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
You can find her. Either way, you'll find her. So tell us a little bit more about the young girl who's looking for her parent. What are some of her qualities? What is she like?
She is fairly well behaved, but a little bit feisty because she's very inquisitive. Her best friend is a boy that she runs around with and steals tractor parts and gets caught in fences and so forth. So she's a typical Midwestern girl. This takes place in the Midwest, 3 different states. And she has this hole, this vacancy in her because her mother dies when she's 5. And her father, that she later thinks wasn't her real father, died when she was 2. And so she's being very, very good because her aunt and her grandmother are raising her, but that sort of goes against her nature because she's a very free spirit and very interested in knowing more about her life. And that's when she discovers that book of all those clippings about this guy. That's why she runs off. And that's a pretty brave thing to do in 57 for a young. She hitchhikes to Enid, Oklahoma, to find him at the racetrack there. And they spar a little bit. She makes up stories. She's very good at making up stories to cover every situation so they can't send her home. She keeps finding ways to hang on. And he's really irritated at first, but when he realizes that she's the daughter of the woman he married years and years ago, and then it was annulled immediately, then everything changes for him. Then he's torn between what he thought his life was about, and does he want her in his life or not? Does he want the aunt to have her anymore because he's still mad at the family? So the little girl has a lot to deal with, and she's trying very hard to be grown up.
And she's 15, you said?
She's 14 and a half.
14 and a half. What's her name?
Her name is Sandy.
Sandy. She sounds amazing. She sounds wonderful. Is the story aimed at young adults, or is it an adult story, or what's the?
I have defied all of that. Which is not a good thing to do. It would be more comfortable for readers if they knew exactly where. But it can be read by younger people because it's a very clean book, even though there's romance in it and so forth. But it's really written for adults. And I would call it more of a woman's story. But there are 6 races in it, and the men who have read it have written about that, how much they've loved that, and especially the ones who have a background in racing and how real it seems to them.
Hi, I have a quick question for you. Do you like murder mysteries? I have one that's a page turner. Tangled Lives. 2 women, one older, one younger, get together to solve a mystery. I hope you'll give it a try.
So I'm sort of covering the waterfront, which may have watered down. Like, I don't know.
The best. That's the best. I'm always, I don't like being pigeonholed into this is women's fiction, even though I write about women and women are the main characters, because so many men enjoy it because I make sure there's suspense and.
But all the mystery, yeah.
Yes. And also, unlike you, I do throw in sex.
Well, I do have a little sex in this one. There's more in the next. You have to break it in easily, Chico.
So I'm very intrigued because, as many of you know who watch the show regularly, this novel that's coming out is my first historical novel. I've never written a historical novel before. And I'm very curious. So are you a do all the research before you start writing, or are you a write research kind of person?
Uh, because this was my background growing up, I
Mm,
had a lot of it, but I still had to do research as I went along. Um,
mm,
and in some cases, retrospectively, one of my subject matter experts pointed out to me that there was no Jiffy Lube in Oklahoma or anywhere else in 1957. So, there's always research to do. And in the
yes.
second book, which is about a homeless socialite, she's secretly homeless socialite, trying to live two lives and hang on to custody of her children. I was very interested in that. I'd interviewed people. I helped start a homeless shelter in California,
Mm,
Northern California, and a children's fund. And I had been a single mother, hawking this and that and trying to stay in school. Sorry, the dog just saw the cat. I'm so sorry.
that's all right. We're happy for them.
Okay. And so a lot of that, some of that was research. In fact, one of the men, Talon, offered to let me sleep in the parking garage with him one night to see what it was like. And
Get
it
the
was
feel.
a legitimate offer just to experience it.
Yeah.
But with children and a husband, I didn't want to do anything that would be risky for them. So I didn't, but I learned an awful lot about the life and what it was like. And so
Yeah.
that happened as I went along with that book.
Very interesting. So you said the second one. So there's
Mm.
another book coming out.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what the agent says.
So
She's
you've
had
got
a
it out there. You're querying.
my I hired an editor for that book, which seems odd because I'm a creative writing teacher. All those years I helped other people write their stories and books, But I just had a feeling that I needed it's a very heavy topic, obviously, homelessness and so forth. And I'm so glad I did. Brenda Coppola was fabulous. And she's the one who asked an agent friend of hers if she would like to read the manuscript. And she said yes. So I'm just sitting at her, twiddling my thumbs.
Waiting to hear.
Yeah, sort of
Yeah.
treading on it, because you never know. It depends
No,
on so many different things.
exactly.
So
And it's not a judgment on the quality of the book. I
they
have
all
come to
say that.
believe, even though we as writers feel
It
so
feels like that.
wounded when we get rejections, but the fact is that it's so many other factors that come into play. And are you working on something else while these
Yeah,
ones coming out? Now tell me when Trophy Girl is out or when it's coming
yeah.
out.
Trophy Girl is out.
Is out. Okay.
It was
And
launched.
then
I
and then you're
that was
waiting about the next one.
waiting on the
And
next one, and then I'm about halfway into a third and also a fourth.
wow.
And the third is a much lighter novel that I've been wanting to write, um, about that midlife period, especially for women, more so than men, I think, but it could apply to both, where you become an empty nester and you rethink things and you move
Mm,
furniture and you rearrange, and you think. And so this character that I've developed wonders if there's anything else more to Annie than what she has been so
mhm.
far. And she's treasuring the idea of this empty nest and these possibilities. And then because of some flaky family stuff, her house fills up with 5 generations. And she
Oh,
has to negotiate all that while she's trying to get away to a friend's offer, an old boyfriend's offer to go to a lake and paint, take up her painting career again. So it's kind of Thurber-esque in a way.
that sounds very interesting.
I think it happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, that sounds like a great
It's
premise.
called the sandwich generation, right? Your
Yeah,
kid comes home and then you take care of your parents. Yeah.
yeah. Now I'm the parent that they have to take care of almost.
I know.
Not
We
yet.
get our turn. We
My
get our turn.
husband and I joke, when the kids, I said, one day they're gonna come and say, give us the car keys. He said, they're gonna have to pry it out of my.
My youngest daughter, who's a caboose, she's 18 years younger than her older sister. And at one point, she finally said, when are you going to admit that Linda's my real mother? Right? There's such an age difference there. But every now and then she'll just say, Shady Pines, Ma, Shady Pines.
This is what are you reading? What are you writing?
It
And we
is.
love sharing books that our authors love. So I wonder if you could share a couple of recommendations with our audience.
I can. Mostly it's authors that I fall in love with,
Mhm.
more so than their books. And I have to say, I studied with James Lee Burke at Wichita State before he became a breakout 37, novels and 2 movies and so forth, success. And reading Jim is marvelous. I love all of his books, and they're mysteries. He's like you, he writes a really good mystery, but he's also literary. There's a fluidity to his writing. And even better than his books is listening to this man talk. He's
Mm.
just incredible, the stuff he knows and thinks about and has strong feelings about. So I felt incredibly lucky to study with him. And his latest book was, what was it? A another kind of Eden. And that was written after one of his daughters died. And it's somewhat autobiographical, even though it's fiction. And then I love Lori R. King. Have you ever read any of hers?
Hmm.
She wrote the Mary Russell series. Mary Russell marries Sherlock Holmes. And there's a whole series of books. And she's everything you'd ever want to be when you're younger or your daughter to be.
Yes.
Marvelous. And Lori King was an historian. And so when she writes Oh Jerusalem, which is one of their adventures, I was there briefly in the Holy Land, and she takes you right back there. I mean, she just knows wherever she's writing about, and she does her research, and she's marvelous. And I love for nonfiction, I love Malcolm. What's his last name? Malcolm. I'll get it. Gladwell. I knew it was a funny
Oh,
name.
yeah.
Remember, he wrote Blink,
Yes,
Tipping
yes.
Point, and all of those.
Yeah.
And he's sort of a contemporary James Lee Burke. James Lee Burke covers everything. And Malcolm is such a student of what's going on. So for nonfiction, I really love his books.
I do too.
And I'm
These are,
reading Louise Penny right now.
oh, okay.
One of her Gamache, whatever, Inspector
A
Gamache
series,
novels,
yes.
yeah, because every now and then you just want to have fun.
Yes. Don't want to have to work too hard
Yeah,
when
yeah.
when
Brings
you're
it to
reading. Yes. Well, this has been a delightful conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to take the time to be with us. If our audience wants to find you, if they want to ask you questions, if they want to find your books, keep up with what's happening, how can they do that?
I would love that. I would love to hear from them and to engage with them in whatever they're trying to do and work on now. My website is just Marlis Broadhead. That's really easy, marlisbroadhead.com. And I'm on Instagram as well, Facebook, uh, Twitter, all of those. And the problem, of course, is the name switches back and forth. But if you go to Linktree, which is maybe people know about that, the new link that takes people everywhere, it's like just a quick menu. It's Linktree/Marlis Manley, and they can get anywhere from there.
From there. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you will all look for her, that you will follow her on Instagram, follow her like her on Facebook,
That'd be nice.
follow her on Twitter. And you want to, can people contact you from your website?
Yes, they can get in touch with me. They can send me an email. They can sign up for my weekly newsletter, Musings and Mirth. So yeah, definitely.
Great title, Musings and Mirth. I like that. So you can do that too. You can get her newsletter, you can follow her, you can write her, and I hope that you will. And I hope that you will be with us next week on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a great week, everybody. Bye.